The 10 most impressive facts about Pope Francis. Number 10. Passionate Argentine soccer fanatic. A typical son of Buenos Aires, Jorge Mario Bergoglio grew up with soccer in his blood. From his youth, he devotedly followed Club Atlético San Lorenzo de Almagro, becoming a member and celebrating its centenary mass in 2008. This passion didn't end in his adolescence. During his ministry as Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he often attended the team's games and received delegations of players and executives at the Vatican. Even after his election as Pope, he maintained his connection with the Ciclán, receiving the San Lorenzo squad that had won the Copa Libertadores in 2014 in a private audience. Even beyond his favorite club, Francis showed admiration for global soccer. In numerous interviews, he praised figures such as Diego Maradona and Lionel Messi, posed alongside Ronaldinho, and even declared that Brazilian Pelé was, quote, the best player in history. Thus, his football passion became an emblematic feature of his public image. Throughout his pontificate, he was frequently heard speaking enthusiastically about memorable matches and supporting sporting initiatives. His involvement in the world of football left its mark on millions of faithful who share that devotion. Number 9. He was a bouncer at a nightclub. In his younger years, Bergoglio held modest jobs to support his family. According to his own words, between the ages of 14 and 19, he worked sweeping floors in the hosiery factory where his father was an accountant, and later in a chemical laboratory. Surprisingly, he added a very unusual job for a future cleric. He was a buttafore, or security guard, at a well-known Buenos Aires nightclub. This fact, until then an unconfirmed rumor, was publicly revealed by the Pope himself during a visit to the parish of St. Cyril in Rome. Francis naturally recounted how working as a nightclub doorman confronted him with the harsh realities of urban life. As he himself explained, the role of buttafore literally consisted of expelling those who were causing trouble inside the nightclub. He recounted this experience to illustrate how personal trials forge faith and humility. According to L'Osservatore Romano, he noted that this physical labor and confrontation with the night was his first experience with pain and loneliness. With this anecdote, the Pope sought to show that even this seemingly mundane episode contributed to his spiritual formation and his closeness to people's daily lives. Number 8. He has only one complete lung. The Pope has suffered from respiratory problems from a very young age. While in his second year at the seminary at the age of 21, he contracted a serious lung infection that led to drastic surgery. Doctors removed the upper lobe of his right lung. The procedure, performed in 1957, left his right lung partially damaged, so that only his left lung remains virtually intact. Bergoglio himself recalls those months as the most difficult of his life, struggling to live after multiple drainages and surgeries. Despite the magnitude of the operation, medical reports indicate that his recovery was almost complete. Over time, his remaining right lung expanded to such an extent that such a complete expansion has been achieved that, if not noted by the history, only a specialist can detect the absence of the removed lobe. He claims not to have suffered any chronic fatigue. Even so, the after effects of that serious respiratory illness remained as his Achilles heel of health. This medical fact has been cited in multiple reports and helps explain why you should treat it with extra caution whenever you are faced with a cold or the flu. Number 7. First Jesuit and Latin American Pope. Bergoglio's election in 2013 was historic for several geographical and ecclesial tradition reasons. When Francis I was appointed, he became the first pontiff of the Society of Jesus, the Order of St. Ignatius of Loyola, and the first Latin American Pope in history. Never before had a Jesuit ascended to the throne of St. Peter, nor had a Latin American assumed such a high responsibility in the Catholic Church. In his installation speech, he expressed his gratitude for this unexpected appointment, recalling that they had sought a bishop almost to the end of the earth. His origin also broke with the centuries-old tradition of European popes. Francis was the first supreme pontiff born outside of the old continent in over 1,000 years. The last non-European pope before him was the Syrian Gregory III in 741. In short, the Catholic Church had not had a pope originally from the Americas or the Southern Hemisphere until his election. This generational and cultural change was interpreted as the Church's opening to new global horizons, giving voice, through the pontificate, to realities other than those of Rome and Europe. Number 6. He decided to live in a simple residence. From his arrival at the Vatican, Francis made a difference in his choice of where to live. Contrary to modern custom, he refused to settle in the luxurious chambers of the Apostolic Palace and opted for the Casa di Santa Marta, the community residence located next to St. Peter's Basilica. Instead of occupying the private papal chambers, he chose a modest apartment in Santa Marta, a building initially built to care for the sick and later renovated by John Paul II as a residence for Vatican guests. Spokespeople described the decision as free and personal, in keeping with his profile as a humble pastor. By following the ascetic guidelines of St. Ignatius, Bergoglio justified living in Santa Marta by his devotion to austerity and closeness to the common people. Within Santa Marta, the Pope maintained unceremonious daily routines. He celebrated his morning masses there and, during the pandemic, even broadcast those liturgies live from the residence's small chapel, a first in Vatican history. He ate breakfast with the community, dressed modestly, and shared common spaces with priests and visitors. Formal ceremonies and large audiences continued to take place in the Vatican, but the majority of his daily life, meetings, lunches, breaks, was spent in Santa Marta. This austere, discreet, yet welcoming residence became Francis's true home during his pontificate. Number 5. Surprise phone calls. A distinctive feature of his pontificate was the unexpected phone calls he made to acquaintances or even complete strangers. For 12 years, Pope Francis personally picked up the phone to wish a birthday, thank someone for a letter from the faithful, and even personally cancel a medical appointment. His strategy was simple. He would dial a private number and, when they answered, despite their initial confusion, introduce himself in a warm voice, saying, "I'm Francisco," and clarifying that it's not a joke. These conversations usually took place at midday and lasted only a few minutes, but he left an unforgettable impression thanks to his familiar and attentive tone. Among the most moving examples is his first phone call as pontiff to his sister, Maria Elena, to calm her down after his election and to joke about the news that the Vatican had charged him for the pregnancy of the Argentine Pope. Another famous case occurred a few days later in Buenos Aires. The Pope called a newsstand vendor who sold newspapers on the street, announced that he was canceling his subscription, and sent his greetings to the entire family. The newsstand vendor burst into tears upon recognizing the caller. With these spontaneous actions, Francis sought to reach out to the faithful through gestures of simplicity, an unexpected call that brightened the day of whoever received it, confirming his motto of "a shepherd with the smell of sheep." Number 4. It revolutionized the Catholic position on the death penalty. In 2018, Pope Francis implemented a far-reaching doctrinal change. He amended the Catechism of the Church to declare the death penalty inadmissible. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith then issued a rescript, establishing that, according to the Gospel, the death penalty is inadmissible because it violates the inviolability and dignity of the person. With this change, the Church abandoned the notion that execution could be acceptable in certain cases and went on to demand the abolition of capital punishment worldwide. The new paragraph 2267 affirms that today it is better understood that every human being retains their dignity even after grave acts, and that alternative prison systems exist that can protect society without depriving the offender of the opportunity for redemption. In short, Francis promoted an ethical shift within the magisterium. The Catholic Church now unambiguously teaches that no state should apply the death penalty. The official text emphasizes that, in light of the Gospel, the death penalty is inadmissible, and adds that the Church is actively committed to its universal abolition. This pronouncement contrasts with past teachings and reinforces the priority of absolute respect for human life, even that of the most dangerous criminal, a change that had widespread international repercussions. Number 3. He recognized Orthodox martyrs without precedent. In May 2023, Francis made an unprecedented ecumenical gesture. Before the Coptic Orthodox Patriarch of Alexandria, he announced the inclusion of 21 Coptic martyrs killed in Libya, 2015, in the official martyrology of the Catholic Church. After receiving relics from these faithful dead baptized in blood, the Pope explained that with His Holiness's consent, that is, with his personal consent, These martyrs were to be inscribed on the Catholic calendar as a sign of spiritual unity between the Orthodox and Catholic churches. It was the first time that non-Catholic Eastern Christians had received such recognition in the Roman Rite, an act the pontiff described as a seed of unity for all followers of Christ. The inclusion of these monks and lay people from the East demonstrates Francis's commitment to highlighting the common sacrifice of martyrs of diverse faiths. By aligning their liturgical memory with Catholic tradition, a centuries-old barrier was broken. No other non-Catholic Christian community had been so recognized by the papal magisterium. This gesture was widely hailed as a symbol of friendship between churches. In Francis's own words, the Orthodox martyrs testify that no one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends, and their example inspires all Christians to pray and hope for full unity. Number 2. He publicly apologized for historical abuses. Francis has offered solemn apologies on behalf of the Church for past wrongs. One notable incident occurred in July 2022 during his visit to Canada, where he apologized to Indigenous peoples for the Church's role in residential schools. "I humbly ask forgiveness for the evil that so many Christians committed against Indigenous peoples," the Pope declared, before survivors and Native leaders. He acknowledged that the policy of forced assimilation, supported by Catholic institutions, had been a, quote, devastating error that amounted to, quote, cultural genocide, according to local authorities. These words were deliberate and explicit, surpassing previous, more generic apologies. The pontiff assumed institutional responsibility for the injustices and abuses committed in the name of Christianity, not only by isolated individuals, but by entire church structures. His public mea culpa had a profound impact. Attendees at the Canadian ceremony wept with emotion upon hearing his repentance and his commitment to accompany the healing process. In short, Francis has focused his message on the need to acknowledge these historical wounds as an indispensable step toward reconciliation. Number 1. He will break tradition by being buried outside the Vatican. In accordance with his express wishes, Francis will be the first pope in more than a century not to be laid to rest in Vatican City. According to the Vatican press office, he will arrange to be buried in Santa Maria Maggiore, a Roman basilica where the Virgin Mary, who always inspired his special devotion, is venerated. His will requested a very simple tomb in the side aisle of that church with the sole inscription Franciscus next to a replica of his pectoral cross. According to official documents, this will be the first burial of a pontiff outside the Vatican walls since Leo XIII in 1903. With this, Francis breaks a centuries-old tradition. Starting the Saturday following his funeral, the faithful will be able to visit his tomb in Santa Maria Maggiore instead of St. Peter's Basilica. The transfer of the papal remains will cover 6 kilometers of the city of Rome, culminating in the basilica where the Pope wished to rest amid his Marian devotions. Ultimately, his final wish underscores the consistency of his message of humility and closeness, sealing with his burial a legacy of simplicity to the end.
Thank you for watching our video. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Give it a like, comment your thoughts, and share this video with your friends and family.